We're live. I'm live right now. Just
Okay, we're back. It is still Wednesday, the 9th, and this is still government operations, Senate government operations. We're looking right now at some issues around sheriffs, and there are actually two kind of separate but related issues around the sheriffs. One is the ability for the state-funded deputies to be unionized, and the other is around the retirement issues. So we're going to look at it's S220 is what the bill is, and there was a bill S85, but just ignore that. That is essentially around unionizing, but it's being replaced by 220. So we've been told to just ignore 85. So here we are with S220, and were we expecting Annie Noonan?
Yeah,
Yes.
Annie and Mark, Senator White, were supposed to join. I'm going to text them right now.
Yeah,
But I don't know that Vince Luzzi was going to start. I didn't know what you guys had arranged there. So.
well, we just need to, because we're so short on time, we need to make sure that we can just go for it. So I guess,
I'm ready to go if they don't show up.
yeah, okay. So Vince, do you want to?
Annie's trying to get in. Annie's trying to get in, Madam Chair.
Okay,
There
Yep.
she is.
I did hear Gail, thank you.
Oh, okay. Pretty good, Mike. Where's your mic?
In fact, Gail, you are on twice. I don't know if you know that or not.
So, Madam Chair, Annie Noonan and Gary Hoadley are on, so we can start now.
Yeah, well, we can start, yes. We're behind ourselves. So
Okay,
if you want to
Well-
kick us off.
yes, thank you very much. On behalf of VSCA, Vince Luzzi testifying. And as we discussed before we went live, I guess it's termed, VSCA is requesting that the committee advance S220 as introduced this session, and we are requesting the committee take no action on S85. This is a very short bill. What it does is it takes our state transport deputies who are 100% salaried by the state of Vermont and declares them to be state employees. For those who have previously served in the General Assembly, it's akin to what we did a few sessions ago for deputy state's attorneys, victim advocates, and administrative secretaries in the 14 state's attorneys' offices. For those of you who have served on the UVM Board of Trustees, you understand there's a balance. UVM is either public for some purposes and private for others. Well, the state transport deputies somewhat find themselves in betwixt those two categories of whether they are a state employee or whether they are an employee of the county sheriff, even though they are fully paid for by the state as far as salary and benefits are concerned. What this bill will do is say that they are explicitly state employees and therefore eligible to engage in rights and responsibilities under the State Employee Labor Relations Act, known in the acronym as SELRA. Thanks to the good work of Annie Noonan and her counterpart at VSCA, Gary Hoadley, the negotiations between VSCA and the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs went very well. And we now have a contract entered into between the deputies, the victim advocates, and the administrative secretaries, as well as the department. As we've seen around Vermont and across America, there is a growing sense among workers from places like Starbucks up to the behemoths of Amazon to organize, to have some level of security and protection in the workplace. And so as we've posed this bill and requested that it be advanced, the simple question is the General Assembly prepared to support this group of approximately 26 individuals to give them the opportunity to organize and join a union of their choice. We believe that S220 will set the stage for them to make that decision amongst themselves. It will give them the level of protection that they seek, just like any other employee who seeks to organize either under the State Labor Relations Act or, as we've seen across America, under the National Labor Relations Act. We think this will be accomplished without any hiccups, without any disruption in state services. And we also believe that it will enable the state paid deputies to have the same rights and responsibilities that other state employees enjoy, and that it would more importantly be uniform across the state. Of the 14 counties, 12 have state paid deputies. And so that is the nutshell of the bill. It's only 3 pages, but if you look at it, the amendments to those sections are very narrow and essentially accomplish what I've just reported. Now, I also would like to say that this morning we had a very productive meeting with Gary Hoadley, and he's the Director of Labor Relations at VSCA, with Annie Noonan, Director of Labor Relations at the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs, with Roger Marcoux, as well as with Mark Anderson from Lamoille and Windham County, respectively. And I wanted to make clear that if S220 is enacted, VSCA will be requesting that a single statewide bargaining unit be created for the transport deputies because of the unique relationship of the state employees vis-a-vis where they are placed for employment in the sheriff's departments. This bill does not amend Title 24, Section 307, which gives the authority to the sheriffs to hire and fire. And thirdly, it would relieve the departments, the county sheriff's departments, of the need to incur legal expenses for legal representation, as well as any legal liability in the event one of these state paid transport deputies is in need of either legal representation or legal liability protection. The final point I would make is that the Vermont State Labor Relations Board is the final authority on where this group of people would land as far as whether they have a single statewide bargaining unit, or if they would be essentially grafted onto an existing bargaining unit. And of course, each bargaining unit has its own contract. Should the labor board decide that they need to be added to an existing bargaining unit, it's my expectation, Mr. Hoadley's expectation, that there would be a side letter negotiated to address the very unique duties and responsibilities enjoyed or required of the transport deputies. I just wanted to close by recognizing Transport Deputy Sheriff Bixby, who is the Chief Deputy Sheriff from Rutland County. He has joined us today. VSCA has been in discussions with a number of the state transport deputies who I can't say to the man, but I would say almost universally support advancement of this legislation. And I will conclude with those remarks. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you. I'm going to make a suggestion here. I don't know if it would make any difference at all, but I do know that right now Appropriations is working on the possibility of, in the short term, allowing the transport deputies to do some court security, and also having perhaps in the long term having state paid deputies do court security. So I wonder if instead of saying transport deputies, if it should relate to state paid deputies instead of just limiting it to the transport deputies. Because right now it is just transport, but it could be court security deputies. And if they do make any changes in their assignments, would that have an impact here, and would that screw it up? So I throw that out so that when you are testifying, Annie and Gary and people, if you would keep that in mind and think about that. So,
Madam Chair,
yes.
just to clarify, the bill language in S220 already is neutral. It just says deputy sheriffs paid by the state.
Oh, okay.
Pursuant to 24 VSA 290B. So
Okay. Well, that's what I
cover any
thought.
changes they make.
That's what I thought, but then Vince specifically said transport. So I thought maybe I hadn't remembered it right. So,
No,
okay.
the
forget that.
statute,
Okay.
the statute
okay.
just says full-time deputies, but we refer to them collectively as state transport deputies.
Well, we're not going to anymore because they may be more than transport deputies. So thank you, Damien. Okay. So forget that suggestion then, since it's already there. Okay. So, yes, I'm going to go first to Mr. Bixby.
Yeah, Mark is trying to get on Senator White. He'd asked if somebody could allow him in.
He is in.
Oh, he is on. I'm very sorry.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Roger. Okay, Mr. Bixby,
Yes, Madam Chairman.
did you have something you wanted to say to us?
Just that, yeah, like Mr. Luzzi said, the majority of state paid deputies are in support of movement into the collective bargaining unit. Again, just, seeking to get this clarification of we've always been caught between these two entities, and this language in this bill seems like that will go a long ways to clear that up and smooth a lot of the challenges that some of the state deputies face across the state.
Well, that was short and sweet. Thank you. So, yes, did somebody?
Yeah,
Brian.
I'm
Brian.
very visible.
Okay, I see you now.
Thank you. So I just had a couple of questions for Vince. When you were testifying, the first thing I heard you say was that the deputy sheriffs would be able to choose the unit. Then later in the bill, it says that they will be part of one statewide bargaining unit. And then you went further on to say that the decision about which one it would be left up to the Vermont Labor Relations Board. So I guess I just need some clarification. What are we talking about? If I'm a deputy sheriff from, let's say, Rutland, can I join anything I want, or do I have to be in the same unit with the other deputy sheriffs? And is that going to be controlled by the Labor Relations Board?
Okay, well, there is no, as far as I know, no other deputy sheriffs in the state belong to any organized um, labor union. This bill is enabling legislation. It does not require that the transport deputies join VSCA, although we certainly hope they do. They are free to join any labor organization that they choose.
But-
And what we're anticipating is that given the unique job description that these full-time state paid deputy sheriffs have, that they will form a single statewide bargaining unit. And we further anticipate that they will be under that the employer will be the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. So I hope that's responsive to your question. If
Yes,
not,
yeah, it is, Vince. Thank you very much.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Annie, did you want to? You're muted.
I have an uncooperative mouse.
I was going to speak for you and say Annie said she supports the bill, and that's the end of that.
Yeah. If I could address Senator Collimore's question.
Yes,
Um,
please.
So what will happen, Senator, is in a situation where maybe even under this language, I think that it's proposing it's proposing one statewide bargaining unit. And in the conversation that we had this morning, Sheriff Marcoux and Sheriff Anderson and I had with Gary and Vince, the conversation was, it's very, very important to understand, if the SEA petitions the board for a bargaining unit, what will they ask for? The reason that makes a very big difference is because it will be important for me to know, and John Berard, Director of State Labor Relations, is on the phone. It would be important for John to know, because if it was a request to have a new separate bargaining unit under the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs, then that bargaining and those issues fall to the department and to me. If it was a request to go into the non-management bargaining unit, that's John Berard's purview, and he would be responsible for that bargaining. Now, the process is such that, and we've identified this morning that we really felt that the SEA needed to be clear as to what their intent was, and whatever they tell us, we understand that they could go to the labor board and say, so our request is for a new separate bargaining unit for these employees. And the labor board could say, okay, that makes sense, and we will do this new separate bargaining unit. Or they could say, no, it's too small of a bargaining unit, and we're concerned about over fragmentation, and that's a term that a unit clarification term, a unit term that the labor board uses. And they could say, no, we're concerned about over fragmentation. And we do think that these employees share a community of interest with other law enforcement and non-management, so we think they should go there. Now, the rub on this issue for the sheriffs is that, unlike any other employer in state government, the sheriffs themselves, as you probably know, have significant financial underwriting and commitment that goes into making the state transport system work. They pay for the cars, they pay for the equipment, they pay for the guns, they pay for people to go through the training academy. So they have this very significant financial interest in how this all plays out. And in terms of putting them into an existing bargaining unit where the sheriffs have had no input into the existing terms of that, creates a problem from the sheriff's perspective. What did they just buy into? The overtime language in the non-management contract is already set. The work week schedule already set. There's a ton of articles which are already established. So if the labor board were to decide that they needed to go into non-management, the department and the sheriffs believe that we would argue with the labor board, at a minimum, there has to be a separate negotiation over a new side letter so that the sheriffs can have input into those issues that impacts them, because it really does impact. No other state manager has personal financial interest. Mike Sherling doesn't pay out of his own business. And don't forget, the sheriffs, this construct of this private public ventureship, which is what the sheriff's departments are. They're partially public and they're partially private. It's a big part of their private business that supports this. Those cars are owned by the sheriffs. They're paying for the guns, not out of state money. So there's things like that. So a big piece of this would be, we would have to have a conversation. I would want to be really clear. What's the direction of the SEA? What will we talk about at the labor board? And how would we present this? I think that perhaps because of their superbly unique situation, and Vince describes it as unique as a result of their job description. I would say more specifically, it's unique because of their, what I would call dual funding, for it. So I want to just answer that, and we could all go in hand, like it could be the SEA and the Department of State's attorneys and John Berard. I mean, we could all go in singing Kumbaya, and the labor board could say, you know what, we don't agree with any of you. And they could make a determination that, that's just a risk. But what we would want to hear today would be clearly, what bargaining unit would VSEA are they proposing? If in fact the labor board were to put them into an existing bargaining unit, does VSEA commit to allowing a negotiated side letter so that the sheriffs have some input? This would all be very important to ensure that the sheriffs are also part of a positive outcome on this bill. So that was just my answer for Senator Collins. I hope that helps the committee.
No, that was very helpful, Annie. Thank you for fleshing that out.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
So my question is, Annie, are you expecting all those things to be ironed out today before we pass this bill? Or does this come after a bill is passed?
So certainly we can't preempt whatever the labor board decides. So that can't be ironed out today. What should be on the table today is what is VSEA. Let me lay this. I do believe that VSEA will be the organization that the deputies select to represent them. I think they've been working with VSEA. I think that's probably already decided. And I think so. I use the term VSEA, and I think that that's a fair presumption. So I think today, what's important to know is, what bargaining unit, when VSEA files, will they ask the labor board to consider, and if in fact the labor board does wind up sticking them in their own bargaining unit, is VSEA willing to commit to a negotiated side letter? And that would be obviously under John Berard if they go to an existing bargaining unit, because John unless they put them in the state's attorney's bargaining unit. So it could be mine or John's issue.
So I guess I'm a little confused here now. I thought that had been, you guys in VSEA had been working on that up to this point, and now you were coming to us to say, we have figured this out, and now we're asking you to take the next step and allow them to be to unionize. So we're gonna, right now, in the next half hour, we're going to be negotiating with the department and with VSEA, and then deciding if we should allow unionization.
This is
think
just enabling legislation to allow them to be considered state employees under SELRA. The rest of it then falls into place under existing statutes and board decisions.
That isn't what I heard Annie say. I heard Annie say that she wanted to have that assurance beforehand.
I think this morning when we were meeting, I think we made headway in terms of the conversation. I think it was cordial, and cooperative. And I think what I heard, and I told Vince and Gary, we, on the record, VSEA should say, well, our intent will be to ask the board to put them in X bargaining unit. And if in fact the board doesn't agree with that, and X being a single designated bargaining unit under Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs. And if the
Which
board,
is what I said.
yep, and if the board were not to agree with that, the VSEA would say, we would agree to a negotiated side letter of agreement to allow the sheriffs to have input into the terms and conditions of employment.
Right, which I also said.
Okay, so we're set with that then. Okay, no, John's shaking his head. I'm getting really confused. Okay, John?
For the record, John Berard, Director of Labor Relations, Department of Human Resources, State of Vermont. So the way the bill is currently drafted, so let me just say we're very pleased that S85 is going the way the dodo with any luck, because that would have created a whole host of different issues. But what I'm hearing now raises those same concerns. The way that S220 is currently drafted, it appears to place, assuming it gets passed, it appears to place this group of individuals clearly under the purview of the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs, just like the deputy state's attorneys, the victim advocates, and the administrative secretaries. That's the way S220 is currently drafted, and the way that, as I understand it and read it, it creates a single bargaining unit as SAS is the employer for purposes of bargaining, which means it isn't going to fall into my purview to negotiate. From an operational perspective, that's a better approach than leaving that determination up to the labor board. That should be hammered out as it appears to be under S220 right now. That should not be left for the labor board, because to put them, for example, in the non-management unit with classified employees, and these individuals are not classified employees, is going to potentially create two distinct sets of terms and conditions of employment that are going much beyond wages and the setting of pay. To Annie's point, is then going to lead into overtime, work week, rules, all of those things. And to the extent that, and I cannot speak for the administration, that we would be supportive, to the extent that some sort of side letter of agreement was offered regarding carving these folks out, so to speak, I'm not certain that that would be in the best interest of the executive branch, given the fact that we have a number of other law enforcement officers who are covered by the non-management agreement, who have in the past attempted to create their own community of interest. So I think it creates a significant problem if these individuals are allowed to organize and it's not SAS who is considered the employer.
Okay, so now I'm even more confused, and let me. The way the bill is crafted, you're saying it does put it under the state's attorney, the Department of State Sheriffs and State's Attorneys.
That's the way I read it.
Okay, so then there's no issue there. And we've heard Vince say that they intend to if the Labor Relations Board wants to put them someplace else, they intend to have a side letter that addresses this. So I don't understand where the disagreement is and what we need to solve, other than, do we allow them to create a union or not? I am really, really confused now. I thought this had all been figured out, and we're not in the next, I can tell you in the next half hour, we are not going to be able to figure out an agreement between VSEA and SAS. Annie?
So Senator, the department is not opposed to the employees having collective bargaining rights. I think the department would be willing to have Damien draft language, and I'm not sure if he was the drafter on the bill that established the state's attorney's bargaining unit, but I think that bill was clear in terms of the intent. It was that there would be a bargaining unit comprised of these titles under the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs under SELRA for bargaining purposes. That's what I think John was pointing out. I think if we could replicate, and I don't remember the bill number, I think it was S230, whatever it was, but it's a couple of years ago. That language was really clear. I think the department certainly would be willing and does not object to if there is a separate bargaining unit. We would then have two bargaining units that we would negotiate for, which would be the existing contract for the state's attorneys, for the deputy state's attorneys and victim advocates, et cetera, and then one for the deputy sheriffs. I think that John and I probably would agree that that's the cleanest way to do it. And maybe if Damien can pull that old language up and replicate it, that would be the quickest way to address it, because it's really clear. That was really clear language. It said who was going to be covered by what bargaining unit, under what authority, and under what bargaining law. That was really clear language. I think I disagree with John a little bit that I'm not sure that this language in this bill is, and maybe I'm just not reading it right, but I think it could be clearer. And maybe if Damien would pull that language up, it would address some of this.
Okay. All right.
Just for your information, Damien had to leave and he's going to try to rejoin us at 3 p.m. So you may have to have a conversation with him about this.
Okay.
All right. So we really can't do anything today then.
Doesn't sound it.
Can I ask Vince whether what Annie just proposed would be acceptable to the VSEA?
I don't think we don't object. That's our intent, but we don't want to have that be the reason the bill doesn't pass this year. We're on the same page. Single statewide bargaining unit under the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs. If not, a side letter of agreement if wedged into another existing bargaining unit. If it's limited to strictly the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs, we're okay with that.
Okay.
All right. So does anybody else who's here want to weigh in? We have Gary, David, Mark, Roger. Anybody else want to weigh in on this and where we are? Maybe at least the concept of whether these deputies should be have union rights. Yes, Roger, and then Mark.
I'll defer to Mark.
Okay, Mark.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Committee on Senate Government Operations. For the record, I'm Sheriff Mark Anderson. I'm the president of the Vermont Sheriff's Association. You may be able to tell I'm sitting in my car. I am parked. I am not driving. So I just wanted to throw that as a public safety announcement that we don't do that. I will be brief in my comments. Sheriff Marcoux, Annie, and I have met with VSEA this morning. We have had discussions for well over a year on this. I don't mean to introduce confusion to this conversation. And so I think Sheriff Marcoux will broach one subject specifically around S-170 and the retirement bill study, simply because it does dovetail very closely with this bill as well, though we believe that they should be separate. The Vermont Sheriff's Association does support this bill. We also, having worked with Annie, we also wholly respect what she has identified as the path forward for the deputy state's attorneys. And so while this is well over my head in terms of unionization, since this is a new realm to me, broadly, the Sheriff's Association supports the premise. What the words are to get to the end, we don't know, but we also know we have crossover looming. And so I'll defer to Sheriff Marcoux on the remainder of the conversation with that.
Thank you. Thank you. Roger?
We support the state paid deputies having the right to bargain. How that's done is over my head and over Mark's head, as he just said, and we're going to defer to Annie. We had a very good meeting this morning with Vince and Gary, and it's a good start. So, and I don't know if that's all you want me to address at this time. And I can get into S-170 later on or whatever.
Well, I was hoping that there would have been an agreement on the language in 220 so that we could have passed it today. But if we don't, I have to say that we have 2 days left and we have about 6 bills that we need to address between now and Friday afternoon. So I was hoping that we would have had the language exactly as it should have been today, but Vince?
Yes, Madam Chair. I think what we're down to is addressing Director Berard's concern, which I think is obviously a valid concern, but a limited one. What I would suggest is the committee vote to advance the bill today, and then either at second or third reading, you can put on an amendment which is agreeable to both Mr. Berard and Mr. Hode and Annie Noonan. And that way the bill doesn't get bogged down in the last 2 days of active consideration before crossover. The amendment, in my judgment, is technical in nature. It should not be a basis to hold up advancement of the bill. Our goal is to have a single statewide bargaining unit under the Department of Sheriffs and State's Attorneys, period.
So, but that isn't what the bill says, right?
Well, we think it does, but I defer to Mr. Berard. He's the expert in that regard, as well as Mr. Hoadley and Annie. But it can be rectified very simply with a technical amendment, in my opinion.
Annie, is that your opinion?
I think the process that Vince laid out about submitting a technical amendment on a second reading would clear this up. I think it would potentially give Damian some time to redraft. As I'm suggesting, because I think that language was exceptionally clear that when they created the state's attorney's bargaining unit. So perhaps that can be replicated and substituted. And I just, for the record, when I know that Sheriff Marcoux has mentioned 170 and that we agreed that we would not ask for anything with that bill to connect to this, except I think that Sheriff Marcoux would like to make a few comments if we have a minute or two.
Yep.
The only other thing I want to alert the committee to is under Title 24, Section 307, the sheriffs have the right to appoint deputy sheriffs, these positions. They also have the right to revoke their deputization, which would be akin to, if you take that away, they're unable to do the job. We did agree this morning that this bill does not supersede the sheriff's authority under Title 24, Section 307. And the reason I'm saying that is I want that on the record here in the committee room that the department and VSEA could discuss that this morning, and we were assured that there would not be an argument later down the road that Title 24 was obliterated by the passage of this language, anything we do here today.
Okay, that's good to get on the record. So does anybody else have, so I guess we could do it that way. Committee members, you can weigh in on this. If it's a simple amendment, if it's a strike all that would replace this language with the language from the other bill, I'm really hesitant to, that's not a simple amendment. And I think we don't want to pass something out and then say, oh, but we're substituting this whole other bill for it.
It's not that, Madam Chair. It's just clarifying a concern that Director Berard has raised. And we want to accommodate all concerns, given that the department and the VSEA support the bill. I think we have it down to the brass tacks as to how we want to move forward, but we don't want Mr. Berard to feel uncomfortable. So I think a technical correction at second or third reading will take care of that.
Okay, I'm going to go to Senator Rom Hinsdale, but first I want to just say that what I heard Annie say was substitute the other bill for this one. And that to me is not a simple amendment. Annie?
Let's go to Annie first. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that there was language that could, that in the original, the bill that allowed the state's attorney's staff to unionize, that was really clear. And I think that if the language that potentially could go under section 2911 of this bill could in essence replicate that, where it just basically said very clearly,
Okay.
there shall be a bargaining unit comprised of these titles, the department, under the Department of State's attorneys, under SELRA. And that was really clear language. I'm trying to find it. I'm looking while you're talking. I'm looking under that session to try to pull that language up.
Okay. Senator Rom Hinsdale?
Yeah, I mean, I just think if that language could be made available, say, by second reading, then we've advanced the issue knowing how tight time is. If for some reason something blows up, we can always pull it back from the floor, but give it a delay of a day. But, I feel like everything we're seeing is nodding heads and a commitment to technically work this out. And I would hope we could move the bill just so we have less on our plate tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that it really was a relatively simple amendment instead of a strike all. But if that's the case, I think that makes sense for us to do that. So here's the question, committee. Should we, does anybody want to vote this out now? And then we'll hear from Sheriff Marcoux about just a few words about 170, and we also are going to look at it tomorrow. But because I think that we do not want to, I know they're intertwined, but if we try to put 170 on this bill, we'll never get there.
Sure.
Okay. Is anybody want to make that motion?
I will move that the committee vote S220 out favorably.
Okay.
Okay, Senator Clarkson,
Yes.
Senator Collmore,
Yes.
Senator Polino,
Yes.
myself, Senator Rom Hinsdale, yes, Senator White,
Yes.
5-0-0.
Okay. And who would like to report this bill?
I'll be glad to do it.
Thanks, Vince. You lost your chair. Somebody else is sitting there.
Okay, sorry.
That fits in with our workforce development challenges in the state, having retired senators come back to report bills. I think maybe actually makes great sense.
Yeah.
Just don't let him anywhere near the Capitol, Bill.
Well, I
And
remember
certainly
once,
don't give them a red pen.
right, I remember once I was sitting in appropriations and I said something and somebody kicked my chair and it was Annie sitting behind me telling me I had said something right or wrong, probably something wrong.
Senator, the bill that passed, just for if Damien's, I don't know if he's back yet, but it was S131 in the
Okay.
it was S131 in the 2017 session.
Right.
Okay. We'll make sure that he gets that language. And will you?
Annie,
and
that
Vince-
was the state's attorneys, the deputy
Yes.
state's.
Yes.
And
Yes.
If no one else wants to report it, Madam Chair, I will.
Okay, that's great.
Madam Chair,
Thank you.
may I ask a follow-up question to the 17 bill?
Yeah, but then we want to have some time here for Roger.
Oh, right, Roger, I just would love to know how many how many people have actually joined the union as a result of that bill?
Senator, are you talking about the state's attorney's bill?
Yeah, yeah,
that we-
how many new
I
unit
think-
members do we have as a
I
result?
well, I think 100, I think it was, Gary can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 107 employees or in that range that became eligible.
And how many of the 107 that were eligible have joined?
I don't have that information.
It would just be interesting, I think, for us to find out at some point if somebody could get back to us.
Okay, so thank you and thanks committee. I apologize. I didn't know that we weren't really all set with this. So, but I think this is a great solution and we'll look for that amended language. And if we send this up today, it'll get on notice calendar. So it probably will be, second reading will probably be next Tuesday.
So
Is my guess.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. So Roger, did you want to just weigh in here a minute on, and we are going to do 170 tomorrow also.
Okay, I appreciate it, Senator White. Roger Markku, Lamoille County Sheriff and Vice President of the Vermont Sheriffs. S-170 was brand new to me. I just saw it yesterday, and I think it was meant to replace S-143, which might still be up on the wall there. And it speaks about allowing 6 or 7, or the issue is that 6 or 7 sheriff's departments still do not have an option for a 20-year retirement. We are stuck in the state Group F plan, which is a 30-year retirement. Conversely, the other half of all of the sheriffs in the state are in the Vermont Municipal Employees Retirement System. So for quite a few years now, I've been trying to negotiate with Secretary Pierce into allowing the rest of us the option. And where that becomes important and where it sort of segues into what we're talking about today is that pre-COVID, the sheriffs were moving between 6,000 and 7,000 prisoners a year. There is no way that the 25 or so state-paid deputies could do this without the assistance of the non-state paid deputies in the 14 sheriff's departments. The problem is there's no equity with the sheriffs, you know, that there's no equity where we can compete when we lose deputies with municipalities in the state that have these 20-year retirement plans. The statute allows for us to be in the state retirement system. It also allows for us to have whatever services are available to towns as long as we pay for it, which we're willing to do. My understanding, Senator White, is that S-170 would direct Secretary Pierce to start looking into the cost of moving those under 100 deputies, we think, into the municipal retirement planning system, or excuse me, retirement system. So this has affected us greatly because we have lost a significant amount of personnel since we first started helping the state with COVID-related motel security, which allowed for motel ownership to participate in the homeless program. Without us, without that security, that wouldn't have happened. Also, we've worked hand in hand with DCF and the Department of Mental Health and Corrections in the Agency of Human Services, which I think is a special niche for the sheriffs, and where the other law enforcement agencies in the state don't have the personnel to help. So basically, it's very critical that we provide some degree of equity to these deputies that are currently in the 30-year plan. And so that we can retain them, and also so that we can recruit new people. So I guess, you know, I know we're limited in time, and I know you've heard this, Senator White, many times from me before, but I appreciate the time.
Well, we have it scheduled for tomorrow, I believe, right?
Yes.
Although it says 1:43, but I think 1:70 is really what we're looking at.
Yeah, as I said, that was news to me. I didn't know that Senator Westman had come up with new language.
Yeah. So I think that, so we have that scheduled right after the floor tomorrow.
Right.
And what I would say is you might want to talk to Senator Westman and make sure that the language in there is really the language that everybody wants. So that
I will. I've had one issue, or not an issue, but one thing I want to say is that if this is held up because the Secretary Pierce says that it's not budgeted where she can do an actuarial study, that we will pick up the expense of doing the actuarial study.
Yeah, no, I think I get that. I just for your information, that's Treasurer Pierce, not Secretary Pierce.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I
don't know if I demoted her or promoted her.
We knew who you meant, but but just to make sure, because even the language in a study can hold us up and cause hours of debate, as we saw yesterday with a simple study that was proposed to us. So if we can have that language that just asks for it to be looked at and make sure that it is exactly what is wanted, that would be great.
By tomorrow, we'll have that too. I believe it is sufficient right now, but we'll have that ironed out by tomorrow.
Okay, great. Anything else on?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Senator Westman would like to be a part of the conversation tomorrow, so he will be joining us.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so committee, we passed 2:20. I'm sorry. David Fox and where did he go? Somebody else was here.
David's still with us.
Yes, I realized that. I was looking, there was somebody else that was with us that didn't get a chance to say anything, and I just wanted to see if they wanted to, but the other person has disappeared. So I'm
I believe it was Gary Bodley.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask David if he has anything he would like to add.
Basically, just wanted to listen in. I do support the transport deputies having an opportunity to union, and I also support the Rogers, the what was it?
170.
As far as the retirement package, I can speak for my agency that there was no less than 6 officers that were full certified that came into my office this year seeking employment, and we came to an agreement on everything but the retirement system. So that did hinder us unable to hire further employees that we badly need for the agency.
Good.
David, what sheriff's department are you with? I'm sorry.
Rutland County Sheriffs.
Oh, Rutland. I'm sorry. Oh, you have 2 from them.
Yes.
So,
Oh, and Brian's feeling very good.
Roger, when you have the language in there in that study, you might want to involve the Pension Oversight Committee also in that, because there is the new Pension Oversight Committee, and they should be. This is something that they could also look into over the summer, fall.
I'll ask Annie to help me out with that because I'm over my head.
Okay.
But thank you for your time.
Yep. All right, committee. Unfortunately, we had our break. So now we're jumping right to our next thing. And thank you, everybody, for coming in. And Mark, if you're in Windham County now, I hope you're driving carefully, it now looks like there's about 3.5 inches of snow out there.
Oh,
Madam Chair, I can confirm there's plenty of snow and I still haven't moved from my park location.
You're gonna be
running
snowed
radar,
in.
Mark?
Unfortunately, no, Sarah Collmore. I am sitting in a parking lot where I had good cell phone connectivity.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. You look so official, like,
He has a tie on. It's great. I wouldn't mind being stopped by a troop.
okay.
All right, enough.
I mean,
Enough.
Sheriff.
Okay.
thank you, senators. We look forward to tomorrow.
Annie,
Thank you,
thank
Annie.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Later.
Vince,
David,
JJ.
Jonathan.
Bye-bye.
David, Mark, everybody. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, so
We're not all here. I'm going to stop the live stream until we go to the next section.
okay, and we're doing that in 1 minute.